Okay. Working in the environmental community, what are some positive experiences you've had?
Well, I've got very good friends and people, real experts that I always worked with. I wasn't a scientist, I wasn't a forester, I wasn't any of these people, but I worked with them and I learned from them. And one of them actually said to me, well, I tell you this complicated issue and it comes out your mouth and everybody can understand it. So that is the role that I think I've played, that you can make it interesting and for the public to understand, and for the news media in the old days. It's very difficult now because the mainstream press is owned by right-wing organizations and they do not have investigative journalism anymore, and they tend to lean towards the timber companies or just repeat what the government's saying, and we know both of them are wrong.
Have you ever experienced conflict within the environmental community, and how would you deal with it?
Oh, there's always conflict. People are good at conflict. There are, and even at Fairy Creek right now, some in the Ahousaht, the elected council, are saying we want the protesters to go, or the blockaders, I prefer, to go, and the ones who are trying to protect the forest, because we want to log it. But then Bill Jones, another elder whom I know well, he's spoken out and said, no, we want to protect it. And I fault the government because they are not giving other options to First Nations and their communities. And that is a major problem. They're saying, well, we will support you financially if you want to protect these forests. That is not an option. We'll only support you if you want to log. So that is going to be a major problem as we go forward, because that's where we are. And they're calling it reconciliation. This is not reconciliation. There is no choice.
Could you tell us about a time you were particularly proud of your efforts to make the world a better place?
Yes, well, I think probably Southmoresby, Gwaii Haanas was one of them. There was only a small band of us working on that. We're on the leadership kind of position on that issue. And, we had everybody against us, the government, the industry, and all of that, as usual. And they were claiming, the industry was claiming, if we save Southmoresby, then it would kill the industry. It was 1/10% of the forest land base. That is the game that's always played, so I know it well. We also went to Ottawa. Elizabeth May, who's the MP here in Saanich, she was working for the Environment Minister at the time in the Mulroney government. She paid our way for about 4 or 5 of us to go to Ottawa to talk to the minister. And we knew the Speaker of the House, and Jim Fulton, who was an NDP member from Skeena, we knew very well. And so we went and lobbied in Ottawa. And we spent a lot of time in Ottawa because the BC government wasn't listening. But eventually we got Van der Zem on side. He was the premier at the time. But it was down to the wire. We didn't know until the last minute that it would really happen. It was pretty scary. All of us were exhausted, and then they had the lutas that Bill Reid had designed, I think, and they paddled the canoe up to Haida Gwaii and had a big feast, and we went and joined in on that.
How were you able to get the premier on your side?
How did the premier? There were many ways, but I just heard a new story, and with Prince Philip dying and all of that, 2 of the major leaders on the campaign were John Broadhead and Tom Hanley, often called Huck, and they met with Prince Philip, and they gave him the book that John Broadhead had really worked on, called Islands at the Edge, and a book about Bill Reid, and eventually, apparently, he spoke to Van der Zem about how important this area was. We don't know whether that made the bigger difference, but I had also given him a slideshow about the destruction of the forest in Clayoquot Sound. So we don't know. You don't know exactly. And I know other MPs in Ottawa did work on the BC government as well, the ones who were from BC.
Okay.
It took a while. It took a while because the forest minister was dreadful. His name was Mr. Waterland, and we called him Mr. Wasteland.
It's a good thing. If you were able to talk to Horgan one-on-one about logging, what would you tell him?
Well, he used to be my MLA. I live in his riding, but I abandoned him over the Site C decision. We were reasonably good friends, and I've told him what I think. I haven't managed to talk to his face anymore, but he knows what I think. And I would say you're lying to the people of British Columbia. You're not showing leadership. You're never going to be forgotten for these mistakes that you have made. And Site C is one of them. It's a gargantuan mistake. It should never be built. And I don't think it can be built with the geotechnical issues on the shale. But destroying the last of our ancient forests, the last 1%. When you said in the election that you would put deferral on this last 1% of the forest, and you've gone back on your promise, and you're saying, oh, we need more time to log the last trees, that's how I see it. I would not mince words.
Absolutely. Okay, are you optimistic or pessimistic for the future of these forests, and how do you imagine them?
Well, I think I want to give a lot of credit to the people who've been there for 8 months in Fairy Creek. I think they're the spark that's lighting a much bigger bonfire, and I think that's really important. People are talking about the war in the woods again, and we're getting more press, and the fact with T.J. Watt's photographs, the before and after with the big trees, that's gone international. And there was a story in the Guardian newspaper, which is one of the few really good publications now on this issue. So I think that we are getting world attention, and we need that. Just attention in British Columbia isn't going to do it. It's always the world is watching. So everybody's working in different ways, and I'm not on Twitter, but others are, and they're putting everything out there. And it's looking very shameful for this government.